Charles Cully Stimson is a senior legal fellow for the National Security Law Program at the Heritage Foundation. He's a widely recognized expert in national security, homeland security, and crime control as well. Mr. Stimson, it's great having you here on the Mike Gallagher Show. We so appreciate you joining us. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, sir. I'm at a loss here. I read the other day that this Jussie Smollett character in Chicago has been ordered. The courts have ordered Google turn over a year's worth of his text messages, voicemails, phone records, because they're obviously trying to determine if he did something nefarious, and they're trying to get to the bottom of it. In this case, you've got a terrorist, an alleged terrorist, I suppose, a shooter who possessed 2 iPhones. Apple, he had the phones encrypted. Bill Barr, the FBI, they sought and received court orders based on probable cause to search both phones. Apple refuses to give them the technology to unlock the phones. It seems like we protect terrorists and their iPhones ahead of American citizens who are suspected of a crime. Can you sort this out for us a little bit and help us see why the Apple is unwilling to cooperate here?
Yeah, let me try to explain the differences not only between the two cases but the broader debate. Let me start with the broader debate. Since the San Bernardino shooting many years ago, in the conservative legal movement and across libertarian and liberal circles, there's been an ongoing debate between, on the one hand, do we as consumers and individuals who value our liberty want to have privacy? We want to have privacy and feel confident that what we're doing outside the eyes of the government is private and that our Fourth Amendment and other rights are protected, versus whether the law enforcement should force Apple to write code to create a backdoor for instances when they can't find out what the password is because the suspect is unwilling to give it. Remember, though, Mike, in the San Bernardino case, the FBI screwed up. The information that the FBI was actually looking for was on the iCloud, the stuff that just naturally goes up from your phone and is backed up.
Right.
But they did not. They had the ability to break into to get into the iCloud, but they screwed it up and locked themselves out of it, thus forcing themselves to go back to Apple to say, hey, can you write code that doesn't exist to help us break into it? And so the Justice Department has had a very consistent position, and Attorney General Barr, who I have immense respect for, is touting the Justice Department's position, and that is, look, we're in another situation now in Pensacola where Apple has provided substantial information without a subpoena to the Justice Department that gave them access to the iCloud information associated with the phones, the transactional data, and some other data that is in the cloud associated with the phone. But it wasn't until the 6th of this month, a month after the shooting, that the FBI then tells Apple, oh, by the way, there's a second phone involved in the Pensacola shooting, and now they're providing all the transactional data, the iCloud data, et cetera, and they want now the code to break into the phone. So there's a vibrant, good debate in the conservative legal movement about which way to go.
And I struggle with it as well, because I understand our expectation of privacy. On the other hand, when a terrorist commits acts of murder and terror on American soil, and they go to court and get a court order to say we want to have access to this data, I think Americans understand when a crime is committed and the judicial process is in play, all bets are off. And it seems clear to me that Apple is not. They're not willing to unlock these iPhones. I'm reading here an article from Input that says that Apple responded to Barr's press conference the other day in a statement saying, in part, there is no such thing as a back door just for the good guys. In other words, they're saying, all right, if we unlock the phone, give the government access to a bad guy's phone, what's to keep us from having to give access to a good guy's phone?
Yeah, and Apple is a worldwide company, and of course they have customers in China and elsewhere, and their point is this. And there's a First Amendment argument too, Mike, that I think is worthy to touch on. And that is, think of this. as a conservative, do we want our government to be able to legally order a private company to create something that doesn't exist so that the government can get into the private company's intellectual property? That's where we are.
But with all due respect, isn't that sort of semantics? You're saying write something that doesn't exist, referring to the code and so forth. But isn't that simply saying Apple is giving access to the data that the government is seeking of a terrorist who killed people on American soil? What's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that as long as the laws that are in place are followed by Apple and followed by the government. So, for example, in the Jussie Smollett case, which he's a knucklehead, and he whipped up this hoax, which I wrote about on thedailysignal.com.
I saw it. Yep.
And you know, this is far different than the serious case down in Pensacola.
But the principles are the same, right?
I mean, they're actually not. They're actually not. And I hate to disagree with you, but I want to be respectful in doing so. And here's why it's different. A sitting judge ordered Google, because this dude had a Google phone, to turn over all the stuff that's held in the third party's hands, Google's hands. It's not on the phone itself. It's not on the device.
Right. It's a third party.
And so under the Smith case, the Supreme Court case going back many, many decades ago, you don't have any privacy interest in stuff that's held in a third party's hands. And so they're just getting the text messages and all the rest of it that's in the third party that looking back over the year. This is different in Pensacola. Pensacola, what Attorney General Barr is asking for is, we want you guys to break into the phone. Apple has no ability to do it, by the way. And then we want to look on the phone itself, the device itself, to see what other apps or whatever is there, because terrorists, you know, smart ones are smart. And what they do is they have moved from iPhones and burner phones to end-to-end encrypted apps. So my guess, as a former federal prosecutor, is that what Attorney General Barr and his team are looking for is access to the device itself to see what they can find on the device that's not in the iCloud that Apple's already turned over. And that's a worthy debate. And by the way, Congress has been asleep at the switch in passing any meaningful legislation on this, and I actually place the blame in their lap because they've done nothing about it.
It's a fascinating debate, and it shall continue. I'm grateful for your input, Mr. Stimson. Thank you so much, and we'll get you back again soon. We'll continue the conversation. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me. Yep.
You bet. Charles Cully Stimson from the Heritage Foundation here on the Mike Gallagher Show. We got a lot more coming up. It's a breaking news day. Stick around. There's more coming up.